Hi. Let's learn about gentlemen's agreements. A gentleman's agreement is an informal, often unwritten agreement or transaction backed only by the integrity of the counterparty to actually abide by its terms. An agreement such as this is generally informal, made orally, and is not legally binding. Despite their more casual nature, a violation of a gentleman's agreement could have a negative effect on business relationships if one party decides to renege on their promise. A gentleman's agreement may or may not be consummated by a handshake. A gentleman's agreement relies on the forbearance of two or more parties for the fulfillment of spoken or unspoken obligations. Unlike a binding contract or legal agreement, there is no court-administered redress if a gentleman's agreement is broken. Still, social pressures and norms help keep gentlemen's agreements in force. The damage to one's reputation can be more harmful in the long run than any monetary gain that may result from going against such an agreement. Gentlemen's agreements have been commonly made in international trade and relations, as well as in most industries. Gentlemen's agreements have been commonly made in international trade and relations, as well as in most industries. Gentlemen's agreements were especially prevalent at the birth of the industrial age and well into the first half of the 1900s, as regulation often lagged new business practices. Such agreements were found to be in use to control prices and limit competition in the steel, iron, water, and tobacco industries, among others. A gentleman's agreement may be made to engage in anti-competitive practices, such as price fixing or trade quotas. Since a gentleman's agreement is tacit, not committed to paper as a legal, binding contract, it may be used to create and impose rules that are illegal. Gentlemen's agreements, because they are informal and often not written down, do not have the same legal and regulatory protections in place that a formal contract has, and thus are more difficult to enforce. Gentlemen's agreements between industry and the U.S. government were common in the 1800s and early 1900s. What resulted, in some cases, were new gentlemen's agreements in which Wall Street financiers, such as J.P. Morgan and his House of Morgan, would meet with the Bureau itself to receive prior clearance on mergers and takeovers. Similar agreements were made in international relations, such as the Gentlemen's Agreement of 1907 between the United States and Japan regarding immigration and treatment of Japanese immigrants. An example of a gentleman's agreement in trade treaties and international relations is the Gentlemen's Agreement of 1907 that saw the United States and the Empire of Japan address immigration from Japan and the poor treatment of Japanese immigrants already in America. The agreement, never ratified by Congress, saw Japan agree to no longer issue passports to individuals seeking to immigrate to America for work. The United States, in turn, would no longer allow discrimination and segregation of Japanese citizens residing in America. A gentleman's agreement may be proposed to consummate a deal between two or more parties without the need for regulatory oversight or a trusted third-party enforcer such as a court or judge. This can reduce transaction costs and also make the reconciliation of the deal more flexible. In 1907, U.S. negotiators settled on a gentleman's agreement that restricted immigration to America by Japanese nationals. In return, President Roosevelt agreed to cancel a San Francisco statute whereby Japanese children were segregated from white students. Other words to describe a gentleman's agreement are an informal agreement, unspoken agreement, handshake agreement, verbal agreement, tacit agreement, or unwritten agreement. Here are 3 key takeaways. 1. Gentlemen's agreements are informal, unwritten agreements between two parties to undertake a transaction or other commitment. 2. These agreements are not legally binding but are instead backed by the integrity, social norms, and peer pressure of those involved and their social networks. 3. Despite their unofficial status, gentlemen's agreements have been common in business and trade dating back centuries. Hope this would help. Thanks for watching.